Robert. How you doing?
Hi, Bobby.
All right.
David.
So hi, I'm Jeannie Dimitriades, and I'm calling this Back Bay Architectural Commission Subcommittee public meeting to order at 4:30 on Wednesday, August 12th, 2026. You can participate in this meeting by going to our Zoom meeting link in our agenda posted online at https://www.boston.gov/public-notices/16602-396 or by calling 646-828-7666 and entering ID number 165604-7575. You can also submit written comments or questions to backbayac@boston.gov. In accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, we are conducting this meeting online. To ensure public access to deliberations of the Back Bay Architectural Commission, the public may access this call through telephone and video conferencing. Members of the public will have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comments on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use a platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at backbayac@boston.gov. Public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per person and should be focused on a project's exterior architectural features, which include landscaping. Issues related to use, street traffic, and noise are outside of the Commission's purview. All right. And so we have our first violation, 251 Commonwealth Avenue, unapproved alteration to the rooftop balustrade. Do we have someone representing 251 Commonwealth?
Yes, good afternoon. Mark Lacasse, counsel for the homeowners.
Hi, Mark.
Hi.
All right, I'll just do a quick recap. Here we have the violation is the unapproved alteration of the roof balustrade, and you can see the image here of how it looked prior to any work taking place. And then what was installed, it was hard to tell in the winter exactly what it is, but it's a planter box to help provide some safety for people who are walking up on the balcony area, because as you will see when I did my site visit, the the existing balustrade is only, I would say, barely 2 feet tall, if that. So it's definitely a safety issue. And this gives you, I think, a good perspective of the limited size of the balcony, and then really the deficiency in the height of the existing balcony railing. So during my site visit, we discussed 2 options. One was traditionally what we do in these situations, which is to install a metal railing behind the balustrade, or possibly moving these planter boxes in to make them freestanding boxes that just sort of cantilever over onto the balustrade to provide a little extra support. So Mark, do you want to give us an update of where we are?
Yes, and thank you kindly for your visit and those suggestions. And after discussing the 2 options with my clients and the architect and the contractor, they're definitely focused on the sort of setback version that you just described, which is to pull the planter box inbound closer to the house, and probably just need about 1 inch to provide that cantilever support, and then support the rest of it with some kind of bracket system inboard of the balustrade, which would not be visible. So we've asked the architect to prepare drawings to show that, and would like to be able to submit that to you at the next hearing for design review, or if the commission desires to remand it to staff, whatever the case may be. But though that was the preferred option, and we think can work nicely, and it will just then look like a planter box behind the balustrade rather than the way it looks now. And we concede that what is there now is not acceptable. So that's where we're at.
Okay. Any questions or comments?
Well, I don't think remanding it to staff is probably the appropriate thing to do. I think we would need to see it.
Sure.
I mean,
What's
it's
the height of those planters?
yeah.
It comes to a full 42 inches.
42 is the building code requirement for a handrail where there's occupied space on a roof like this. So the combination of the balustrade and the planter totals 42, and we can certainly ask the architect to very carefully dimension that so you see exactly what the measurements are. But again, we think that pulling it in about 4 inches from the current edge of the balustrade in the front to the back of the balustrade will really produce the visibility image that it's just a window box behind the balustrade.
So will the boxes be right below the height of the balustrade?
Well, they'll rest on the top of it about 1 inch to provide that cantilever support from beneath, with the rest of the support coming from brackets that are inboard of the balustrade on the deck side that won't be visible.
It'll remain at the same height.
So
Yes.
it's the same height, but behind it.
Right.
Yes, but sort of set back to produce the effect that setbacks produce.
Yeah, Rob, I think I'm with you. I think I need to see a drawing.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
a line of sight,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
Because I sort of think of the iron fence would be more simpler and less visible, but I don't know.
yeah, Jeannie, if I may, I agree with you completely. I think this is going to still be quite visible from the ground.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I don't know that that's going to achieve the goal that we're looking for. I mean, the planters have to be made not visible
Mhm.
completely or minimally visible. If you're standing in the middle of the Commonwealth Mall or across the street, you look up, are you confident that we're not going to see it if you pull it back?
That's
No,
my
I think you're going to
So
see
you're
it,
gonna
but I
see
think
it.
it's
Yeah.
not going to read as part of the balustrade.
right.
So, the issue now is that it's reading as an extension of the balustrade. So the idea of pulling the planter boxes back would be reading as a piece of furniture behind the balustrade.
I don't know, my
Which-
problem is it looks so heavy on top of the balustrade, and even if it's behind it, it'll still look like it's on top of it.
And it's permanent, unlike furniture, which is not.
Yeah.
And one other suggestion was that the planter box be painted a color different than the current configuration, which matches the balustrade, to differentiate it and make it look more like furniture behind the balustrade. So we can have a rendering of that image as well.
I would
Yeah.
come prepared with two things, the fence and that, because I'm just not convinced about the planter boxes.
Yeah, I'm very dubious that that's going to achieve the goal that we're looking for.
Hey, Jeannie, I like that idea. 2 options.
Okay.
Yeah.
One with a fence and one with this planter ID.
The sense of the handrail behind was that it would be more visible.
I kind of disagree with that because this is
Yeah.
a big solid band.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
like, when you said putting it behind, I was thinking it was going to be on the floor, so it prevents someone from getting too close because it
Mhm.
puts a barrier there, but having it basically still on top of the balustrade, but set back a couple of inches, to me looks the exact same.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you're gonna attach it to the balustrade, correct?
Yeah, it would rest on the balustrade about 1 inch, but be supported by this other bracket system inboard.
Yeah, versus like, look at the fence to the left, imagine that
Yeah.
behind the balustrade. Yeah, you
Right.
see it, but it's very light and airy.
Mhm.
It doesn't make as much of an impression as this big solid band.
Mm. Okay, I will get 2 options
Yeah.
drawn, and whatever renderings or to give you the options to see both.
Okay, so is someone ready to make
I'll make a motion.
Okay, so members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions, provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your comments to staff via email at backbayac@boston.gov. Public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per person and should be focused on a project's exterior architectural features, which include landscaping. Issues related to use, street traffic, and noise are outside the commission's purview. Okay, do we have any questions? Not seeing any hands raised.
Not seeing any hands.
Okay, I think it's Sue.
Sue.
Sue, is that you?
I can't
All
get
right,
the,
Sue.
there it is. Okay, sorry, having trouble with the audio button. Yeah, I would suggest that they offer sight lines for both options as well, because I think the issue is how visible it is from the mall, and if they can pull the planter box a bit further back, they might have a better shot at getting approved. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Nope, not
Okay.
seeing any more.
I see no hands, so we want to move to the motion.
My motion is to continue this to the next meeting, to give the applicant enough time to come up with the two options as discussed.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second,
Great.
Right, Rob Weintraub,
Yes.
David Sampson,
yes.
and Jeannie Dimitriadis.
Yes.
Great. All right. Okay, Mark, we'll see you next month.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, so that brings us to the next violation, 274 Marlborough Street, unapproved masonry work at the front garden and entry. Do we have someone representing 274 Marlborough Street?
Yeah, Sean, are you here? Sean Moriarty. Let's see your name here.
I'm not seeing it. This is a continuance, correct?
Yes, yep. Maybe.
Did you hear from them?
Oh, yes, yes. And he sent in a presentation. Let's see, he may be calling in. Oh,
There's an iPhone raised.
all right. Hi, Sean. I think that's you.
How are you? Sorry, it wouldn't allow me to unmute.
Yeah, no, we have you right here. Hold on. I'll just
Okay. So do you want to
Mine-
just identify yourself and then Joe will bring us up to date?
Yeah, Sean Moriarty representing 274 Marlborough Street.
Thank you. Okay, Joe?
Yep, and this violation was the unapproved reconstruction of the non-historic wall and fence. And you can see here before any work was done, how that looked. Here's a historic image that showed it was just a curb here with no fence. And here is an image showing the fence that was installed at some time in the 1940s. And here was the reconstruction of the wall with the idea that the fence would be put back in place just as it had looked previous to any work. And Sean and I had a few conversations, and what he's proposing to do now was what my recommendation was, which is to remove the wall, install curbing that is similar to what is next door and what was there historically, and then to reinstall the pre-existing fence on top of the curbing. And these are some images provided by Sean showing that this is a fence. So this wall would be removed, which was rebuilt. It would be replaced by a curb, and then this fence would be installed on top of the curb. And the idea of using the existing fence is that it matches the existing handrail, which will remain in place. And this is, I believe this is what's next door. So again, this is what the installation will look like. There's some details supplied by Sean of what the brownstone will look like. All right, Sean, anything you want to add or anything you want to elaborate on?
No, that's basically it. I mean, we'd get remove the brick wall and install the brownstone curbing, more or less identical to the neighbors. It was just the existing fence. The homeowners wanted to reuse it if possible once it met the height regulations and restrictions because it matches the existing handrails. I did just walk the street and notice that none of the neighbors have identical railings. It is a black iron railing, so we were hoping that we would be able to just reuse that.
All right, do we have any questions and comments from commissioners?
I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay. Any comments from audience? I'm not seeing any hands
Oh,
raised.
do you want to read your?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't read yet.
Yeah, that's all right.
Sorry. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at backbayac@boston.gov. Public comments will be limited to 2 minutes per person and should be focused on a project's exterior architectural features, which include landscaping. Issues related to use, street traffic, and noise are outside the commission's purview. And I believe Serge has his hand raised.
Okay, sir.
Good evening, commissioners, and so Serge Savard, chairman of and co-chair of the architecture committee for the neighborhood association of the Back Bay. I have a question regarding not the curb, but also there is two, if you want, almost banister that have been put on each side of the current handrails that are also in brick. Will these be removed as well? So you see them on this photo very well. So you have two steps, and then there's two steps again of the same type of construction. And I'm curious to exactly what will remain and what will disappear. Will the first step here disappear and the second step will stay? That's what I would like to understand. Thank you.
I think he's wondering about the first step. It's like the first maybe 3 steps, the wall comes up at a certain height, and then it steps up again and continues straight in. I mean, that's part of the existing stairs. If you were to pull out that first step that Serge is talking about, you'd wind up pulling out the entire stairs.
No, but if
They're
you look
all-
at the current pictures that we're seeing here that you may not be able to see on your phone, there is a small step up of about maybe 1.5 feet, and then again a slate on top of that. That is before the stair starts. I'm curious if that portion will be removed as well.
Are you just wondering about the bluestone cap that's on top of the brick?
Yep, and the small step of the brick too.
Well, to remove that brick section, you're going to have to remove the whole stairs. That's all tied together. So if you're going to remove those 2 sections, you're going to have to remove the entire stairs and put in a full new staircase.
John, can you cut it back to where the bottom stair starts? I think that's what
Ye-
Serge is asking. Is there any way to cut that back? You can cut back the bluestone cap and the brick. Looks like maybe 3 brick lengths to get to the first step.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I understand what you're saying. We can. The only thing is, which you probably can't see in this photo, that from we'll say the second step out to the first one, it's pretty much the same size as the next one above it. So it's all it's similar size and shape. If we cut it back, you're probably bringing it back to like 8 inches, and then the step above is going to be, 1.5 feet. So it's not gonna look
It won't be
right either. It won't be symmetrical.
Right.
Yeah, I kind of have less issue with that, Robert,
Yeah, I
myself.
don't have an issue with it.
Because I think it's better to look symmetrical and it looks like it's protection for the step.
So if you cut it back, just remove the existing the new wall that you did, cut it back to that first pillar.
Yeah.
Right,
That's probably gonna be that'll be my
right.
motion.
Take the short pillar off, right, Rob? Is that what you thinking?
No, leaving the short pillar.
Yeah, leave the short pillar in place. I mean, if it's possible to cut it back to get closer to the stairs, then, but I can understand if you do it to one side, you got to do it to the other side.
Yeah, and I think the idea is that the wall on the left side will be removed too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so both both walls coming off the steps on either side will be removed, but you also have the pillars on either side of the steps, and the steps themselves are tied into those sides, and it's all built in together.
Yeah.
Where you can see the man in the black shirt standing, from the face of that pillar, if you bring it back to the to the step, you're only leaving 8 to 10 inches on that first pillar. So it's not going to look symmetrical with the one above it. You're going to go from 8 to 10 inches to that roughly 2 feet, and then you step up again to the landing, and it's another 2 feet. So we can cut it back. It's just it'll be funny looking. It won't be symmetrical. But from the face of the first pillar out to the street and across the street, all that wall will be removed and the curbing will go in there.
I think
Okay,
I'm good with that. I'm good with that.
yeah, I'm fine with that too.
Go with that as well.
Okay, I believe Lori Thomas has her hand raised.
Lori.
Here, oh, here she is.
Yeah, she's still muted. You able to?
Hi, Lori.
Hi, everyone. Lori Thomas, NAB Architecture Committee and Tree Committee. I'm disappointed. I was hoping that the curbing was going to continue into new railings all the way up the stairs, but that's okay. My question is concerning the grade in the garden, which I think is higher because it's been behind this wall for so long and the tree there. Curious to know if you're going to have to excavate ground out of there and how you're planning to handle that with the tree. Thank you.
Right now, I measured earlier today. I believe it's 4 inches below the window that sits level with the garden. I mean, if it's too high, like what is the required height that the garden is supposed to be?
If you're
Yeah,
asking
may
me, I don't know, but it did strike me as looking a lot higher than what we're used to. And it seems like the tree's been thriving there at that height. So if you're going to have to excavate it, you're going to end up exposing roots or have other situations. Maybe there's a way that you can keep it built up around the tree if you need to excavate it with some kind of paving around it, you know, some masonry, you know, to make some sort of a bed for it that's raised above the rest of the level.
Yeah, what actually happened as well is the stop work order was put in place before we were actually fully finished. So when we removed the existing, some of the dirt was taken back from the wall so that there was room to work there. So it might just be that it hasn't been graded back down to where it was supposed to be. We weren't fully finished. So it might just be extra dirt and debris that came out of from behind the existing wall. But I'll definitely grade it down to where it should be, that it's not, you know, funky looking.
All right, so go back to Robert. Are you ready to make your motion?
Yes, my motion is to approve the plan as submitted by Sean to include the removal of the newly built wall and bluestone and cutting it back to the first pillar and the reinstallation of the previous fence. And as part of my motion, we'll ratify the brick that was installed on the walkway, which was also done without approval, but now will receive approval.
So you're
Okay,
gonna
we have a
take
second.
down both sides.
Take down both sides of the newly built
Yeah.
wall and reinstall the iron railing.
And then Sean's gonna make sure that the dirt around the tree is landscaped such so it just won't kill it.
Right. The dirt will be below the brownstone curbing that he's going to install, and then you can taper it up and then maybe support it with some bluestone, some bluestone steps to give it some more structure, is what Lori was saying. So if
I
you,
said,
yeah,
I second.
All right.
Okay, back to Joe.
Yeah, Rob Weintraub,
yes.
David Sampson,
Yes.
and Gina Dimitriadis.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Sean.
Excuse me, sorry, actually, not to cut you off. No, I just thought of something here. If you're looking at the stairs, when we remove the left side wall and put in the curbing, I'm assuming you'll want a railing on that side also. It wasn't there previously, but if we install the curbing and put the railing on the middle of the wall, you're probably going to have, again, maybe you'll have our railing that we install, foot of space, and then the neighbor's railing. Is that?
If you already have the neighbor's railing, you can just leave that. Typically, that's the way it's done. Is you share a railing on the party line. You don't? Do you have a picture of it?
Not on hand, but I can take one tomorrow.
No, that's a picture right there. So
Got
you
the
have
railing
it.
right
there
there.
on the left.
So when you take down that wall, the newly constructed wall, the left side knee wall with the bluestone cap, you already have a railing in the neighbor's garden. I don't know if that goes, is that set in brownstone curbing? Or
It is, I believe, and it runs the length of just back beyond the stairs, I believe.
right. So you might just have to fill it in with some additional brick on the ground level.
Or curbing,
Yes.
curbing to match the other side.
Unless there's curbing, yeah, if there's curbing already there, then that should be sufficient. If not, you'll have to install some curbing to support that railing.
But he doesn't
Yeah,
have to put a
we-
whole new railing there, right? Just leave the way it is.
I think if you remove that knee wall, you're gonna have, he's saying there is curbing behind it. So it appears that the wall was built in front of the curbing.
Take down the wall and you should be good to go.
Right, yeah, and extend the paving where the wall
And
was.
extend the paving into where that wall is now, and that should be sufficient.
Okay. Perfect. Also, I have tried turning on my camera. It's not allowing me to. I haven't been hiding from you. It just hasn't allowed me to turn it on.
So Joe, do you want to just kind of review it and make sure it gets done right, since we can't really?
Oh, of course, yeah.
This is that, as part of, I'll amend my motion to say any further details to staff.
Yeah, Sean, why don't we meet on site and we can review it?
Absolutely,
And everything.
I'll send you an email.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. So now moving to 416 Marlborough Street, unapproved lattice wood enclosure at Marlborough Street. This is another one that's been, what do you call it, extended from before.
Yeah, continued. Who's
Continued
here?
from
You could
before.
raise your hand. Who's here for this to present?
So I think Matthew Lena raised his hand. Yep, here he is.
All right, Matthew, are you? I didn't think you were part of this team. Matthew, you should be able to unmute yourself.
How about now?
Yes. Yep. Yep. Well, before you go, let me just remind everyone what's going on here. This was the unapproved addition of the lattice enclosure, which is concealing this unapproved switching system. And we initially thought that possibly this could go inside the building. That was explored. We thought then if it has to stay outside, this could be rotated and screened, maybe with vegetation or something else. But then further work has been going on to try to relocate the equipment inside the building. So Matthew, are you part of that?
Well, I am sort of, but more to the point, Fabio Martini contacted me a few minutes ago. He's the manager at 416. He couldn't get on Zoom, so he asked for the phone number. He's apparently connected, but waiting. You have to unmute him on the phone connection.
So can he raise his hand so we know?
I don't know if you. I don't. Can you tell? He's listening. Can you tell him how to do that? What does he?
Try see if this is.
Is that iPhone L4V?
Well, I just asked 781-724.
And it's Paul's iPhone.
Hello.
He says he can hear
Hi.
you. There you go.
Okay.
Yes, I can hear you now, and I think you can hear me. So
Yes.
thank you, Matthew. Yeah, for some reason I couldn't join Zoom, but I'm in through the phone. So on our last meeting, we introduced 3 options to the BBAC committee, and
since then, the board has moved forward with option 1 and 2, which is hiring a engineer, and they've moved forward, signing the contract. I believe I sent that to Joseph, and Joseph and I haven't. If I haven't, I will do that tomorrow. The board has hired Costantini Engineering. They're in the first phase of the project, which they are investigating the triple switch on the outside. Whether they're going to apply for a variance to remove it, or to remove it completely, or have it removed on the inside, which would be a smaller equipment, and only the connection points would be on the outside, as suggested and discussed also by Matthew on our previous meeting. And that's where we are right now. It is going to be it's not going to be an easy or short project, but it is the board's it's the board's decision to move forward to remove the triple switch from the front yard, which I think it's what the committee and the neighborhood were hoping for, and I think the board has taken that into consideration, not only because they want what's best for the community, but I think it's something that they weren't aware of that could be done originally. So I guess at this point, we were looking for more time. I'm not sure, we don't have a time frame from the engineering, from the hired engineering vendor, contractor, but as soon as we get that, I will forward that as well to Joseph, so it can be presented to the board either in the next meeting or the meeting after that.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from commissioners?
Extended for 60 days.
Okay, so let's move to public comment then.
Within the next 60 days, I think we should at least have an answer from the engineering contractor to give us a time frame. I'm not sure, because this also is correlated with what IDS, because these are, they're going to have to apply, and that depends on how fast IDS is going to respond and how they're going to respond. So it's not totally up to the engineering or the board. So I just ask for the committee to bear with us, I guess, and as we move through these steps, and we'll make sure to keep you informed as we move along.
Okay.
If I could, this is Matt Wade, if I could intercede, I'd be astonished if anything useful would be ready before 90 days. This is a very technically complicated.
I
thing.
agree.
Yeah.
You want to give them until January 1st? We're out in November, is that right, Joe? Do we not meet Thanksgiving?
No, we'll be
We
meeting.
meet in
I
November.
think we had to move this. We may have had to move it because of Veterans Day, but we will be meeting every month.
Do we give them until January?
All right. Why don't we? I'm ready to make a motion to,
Okay.
and then
All right.
consistent with what Dave Sampson had mentioned.
Okay, members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at backbayac@boston.gov. Public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per person and should be focused on a project's exterior architectural features, which include landscaping. Issues related to use, street traffic, and noise are outside the commission's purview. And I believe Serge has his hand raised. You want to speak, Serge?
Need to unmute him. Okay, Serge.
All right. Thank you. Thank you again. I do have just a clarification question. First, I must say that I'm very pleased that the board is doing this project and trying to move the most of the equipment inside. I think it's going to be great. I think it's a great. I really appreciate it. I would like to just confirm the two options that are being looked. I think one of them is obviously move the triple switches inside and leave maybe just a connection point outside. And the second, I believe, was a deviation to have no connections at all. But I would like to confirm that is truly the second option, what the second option is. Thank you.
That is correct. That that would be the second option, to apply for a variance where the building is grandfathered in and the triple switch can bypass the code.
Thank you very much.
But either way, you're removing the existing equipment.
That is correct.
Right.
Okay, Matthew, did you have another question?
Well, I just wanted to reiterate, the point which has been point of confusion all along, and we've hopefully cleared it up, but I want to make sure it's nailed down. That again, the only equipment required to be outside are the 2 generator connection points. That specifically the so-called load bank connection points do not need to be outside. So just the 2 generator connection points, and that those 2 enclosures can be wall mounted. And I sent the commission through Joe an email early yesterday. You'll see a photograph in there where I outlined where those connection points could be, sort of on the oblique leg of the bay, 416's bay, where they'd be very easily sheltered, screened by foliage. That would be an excellent outcome. That would require no conduit, no pad mounted equipment, no freestanding equipment at all. So I'd just like to emphasize that is what, I'm not speaking for NAB, but we have been discussing, we're looking for. And anything more than that, I would seriously have to question. One last thing, this opinion that I keep giving that that's the only equipment required is supported by a letter that I obtained from an engineer who's on the committee that makes the electrical code requirements for generators, where he outlines those facts. So it's kind of this unimpeachable statements that I'm passing on here. Thank you.
All right. So to be clear, Joe, can you go back to the photo of the two boxes? All right. So what you're saying, are these going to go completely away and the pad, correct?
That's
correct.
what I should do.
Okay. And then you're talking about something on the wall on the outside or on the inside?
On the outside, that would be the connection points.
Okay. And what type of mechanism, what type of structure is going to be on the outside?
Well, isn't that jumping the gun? That's what they have the next 90 days to figure out.
Well, if I could intercede, because there have been other buildings in Back Bay that have these connection points. These are electrical enclosures between 18 and 25 inches wide, maybe 25 tall, maybe 9 to 12 deep.
So it's
There are
like a
2 of
little
them.
electric box, essentially.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Okay.
an oversized electric
right.
box. And
All
that those could go.
And that would be, we would present that as soon as the engineer gives that to us. But that is, yes.
Understood. All right. I'm good.
Okay, so Rob, to move to you.
My motion is to continue this violation for 120 days or sooner, as the applicant has their mechanical engineering drawings complete.
I second.
Great. Okay, Joe.
All right. Rob Weintraub,
Yes.
David Sampson,
Yes.
and Gina Dimitriadis.
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so we move to the actual commission hearing.
Yep, I'll bring up the script.
Okay. Hi, I'm Gina Dimitriadis, and I'm calling this Back Bay Architectural Commission public hearing to order at 5 p.m. on August 12th, or 5:09, on August 12th of 2026. You can participate in this hearing by going to our Zoom meeting link and our agenda posted online at https:// it disappeared. www.boston.gov/public-notices/166-02396 or by calling 646-828-7666 and entering ID number 165-604-7575. You can also submit written comments or questions to backbayac@boston.gov. In accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, we are conducting this hearing online. To ensure public access to the deliberations of the Back Bay Architectural Commission, the public may access this call through telephone and video conferencing. Members of the public will have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at backbayac@boston.gov. Public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per person and should be focused on a project's exterior architectural features, which include landscaping. Issues related to use, street traffic, and noise are outside the commission's purview. Okay, and are we moving to minutes?
Yeah, and I will just report on the commissioners who are present. We have Gina Dimitriadis, Susanna Gaspar, Tom High, Tom Vinayer, David Sampson, and Rob Weintraub, and staff present, myself, Joseph Cornish, Director of Design Review, and Sarah Lawton, Preservation Assistant.
Great. Okay, so we have the minutes from 6/10/26 and 7/14/26 public hearing. We need to ratify them. Do I have any questions or comments on the minutes? And if not, a motion to approve.
Move approval.
Okay, do we have a second? No one seconding?
I second. Sorry, I second. I was on.
Okay. All right, and back to Joe.
Yep, Gina Dimitriadis,
Yes.
Susanna Gaspar,
Have to, sorry, I have to abstain on the June and approve 7 of the July minutes.
okay. Tom High,
Yes.
Tom Vinayer,
Yes.
yes, okay. David Sampson,
I also have to abstain in June.
okay. Rob Weintraub. Oh, Rob, you're muted again.
Oh, wait. You
Oh,
sure?
now we hear you. Yep, now I
Nope.
hear you.
Okay, so that gives us enough for June, right? Because it's 5.
Yes, yep. Rob, you said yes?
Yes, yes.
Yep, okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Moving to the first project, application 27.0066. It's 226 Beacon Street. At rear elevation, replace 2 existing river windows with an oriel window. Do you have somebody here from the applicant? Not seeing any hands
I'm
yet.
William Young. I'm here as
Hey,
the
William.
historic consultant on the project. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you. And Joe, do you want to move to your comments?
Yes.
Also, I just want to say this is Eric Down from Carpenter McNeil. I'm also here. I'll be presenting with William.
Thank you, Eric.
Staff notes that 226 Beacon Street is a 5-story stone row house built in 1864. At the June 10th, 2026 hearing, the commission approved the restoration of the front entry, but the proposed enlargement of the 2nd-story rear window was denied without prejudice to permit the applicant to present alternative designs. The applicant is now proposing 2 options. One is a copper-clad oriel window, and the second are 3 windows with a cast stone surround. Staff let's see here. Staff recommend approval of the copper oriel option because it is characteristic in proportion and scale to similar windows found at rear elevations at this area of the district. So I can move forward if that's okay with you, Eric and William. Just let me know when to.
Sure.
That would be great. William, you want to start?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So again, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to see you again. And for those who were not present in June, I want to mention how very excited we are by the restoration of the vestibule at the front elevation. This was a very important feature, once shared with the sister building at 228, but both lost over time. And with your very kind and I would say wise approval in June, the restoration of the vestibule is proceeding really entirely as documented in historic photographs. So that is a very exciting development. At the rear, the owners had an interest in expanding their view and their daylight. This is a narrow house, and ironically, the restoration of the vestibule was making the interior still darker, and noting the presence of a very large Hopes type steel framed casement system at the second floor level of the adjacent sister building. We were certainly aware that the original symmetrical relationship of these sister buildings at the rear had been compromised really just as much as had been the case at the front. And so insofar as there was very little compositional integrity, if you will, remaining to the pair, we proposed the introduction of a single window set within brick piers at the second floor level between those the two that exist, and that was what was denied without prejudice in June. More recently, two alternatives have been prepared, which Eric will now present. I want to mention that I believe both are drawn from Back Bay precedent, and I would like to moreover suggest that they represent potential future precedent as well, insofar as the day may come when a future owner of 228 Beacon Street may seek to modify the very intrusive window that exists at that property. So perhaps, if all goes well in the fullness of time, we may have a restored symmetrical relationship at these buildings. So with that, I hand it over to Eric. Thank you very much.
Thank you, William, and thank you to the commission for hearing us this evening. Joe, would you mind advancing it one slide? So looking around Back Bay, William and I were in discussion about what might be a suitable approach in order to create something distinctive at this location that would feel within the character of the neighborhood. And we were looking at copper-clad oriel windows, and also at the slide to the right, a copper cladding of a projecting bow front on a row house farther down Beacon Street, just outside of Back Bay. So could you advance to the next slide? So our first thought was, if we treat this like an oriel window, but in fact, because we're wrapping a curved facade, it would actually be a projection concentric to the bow, projecting about a foot from the face of the existing masonry. And because it was a distinctive feature, and looking at the precedents that we had looked at, we thought that the window type could actually be something different. So here we have a set of 3 large pane windows separated from smaller windows above by a copper transom bar. The next slide. And we have a couple of perspective views showing how that might actually look from Back Street. And then in relation to the Hope steel window at 228. But we were curious what the relationship of this copper cladding might be to the masonry facade. And if we could advance to the next slide. William had the idea, sorry, these are just a materials palette showing the patination of copper over a 30-year period. The next slide, I'm sorry, Joe. And then William and I were in discussion, and we thought, well, what if, given the fact that we're restoring cast stone to replicate brownstone at the front of the building, what if we were to actually engage that material at the rear and do 3 equal-sized double-hung windows separated by cast stone pilasters, which looked like brownstone, with a large cast stone, brownstone-like lintel. The clients have been very clear to us about their very strong desire to open up the view across the Charles to Cambridge. It's really a significant, it's a significant view. The house is relatively dark because of the projecting, because the buildings a little further to the west project a little farther toward the rear property line. And they just feel it's an opportunity to add a lot more light to a room that they're going to use a lot. And so we're presenting these two options really to generate your opinions and give you a sense that we're looking for opportunities to do this the right way. And we hope we can come up with a solution that you can find acceptable and approve.
Let me, can I react, if I may? First of all, I think I want to comment that this is outside, both of these are outside of the guidelines, but we have in the past, in certain cases, allowed changes on the rear facade that aren't within the guidelines, as long as they are consistent architecturally with the style of the building and the design of the building, when there has been a major restoration in the front. We did that at 18 Commonwealth, and we did it before that at 321, 323 Marlborough. So I think in this case, this is the same kind of a situation. If we have a proposal which works, that's consistent architecturally, I think the commission can make an exception and approve it, and I would be in favor of doing that. I think you really, and I've looked at this a lot, and I've spent some time walking around and going through pictures and so forth, and I really think that you have one winner, which is this brownstone bay window. I understand the attraction of a heavier, more ornate, more striking copper-clad oriel, but I can't find any example where there has been an oriel installed on a bow. Yes, that style of window does appear throughout the residential district, but it's always on a flat surface. It's not built into a multi-story bow. I went through, there are about 175 buildings in the residential district which have two or more story bows. None of them have anything like this. I couldn't find anything in the alleys either. So I think the copper-clad approach is not, it's a typical design, but not a typical design for a bow. Whereas the brownstone bay window fits very nicely. It looks like it belongs. And the contour fits the plane of the bow. It's not sticking out. And I think that it would be a more desirable precedent for the future if a change were to be made in the sister building. So that's where I come out, and I'd be willing to move approval of the brownstone bay window, but I would really have problems with the copper-clad oriel.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Any other comments or reactions from commissioners?
I agree with Tom. I think that the masonry over the copper would be more appropriate.
I also agree. I think it's simpler and kinder to the building. I would be very interested in the column capitals of these pilasters. I think that could sink this design if it were over detailed, if you know what I mean. So I don't know if you thought about like what kind of tectonics detailing would be appropriate historically, knowing that it's not historic, for this building.
We were thinking probably a fairly simple Doric or Tuscan style capital, and a very simple sort of, not an attic base, but sort of a standard Tuscan base.
And is that in addition to the brick, or are you proposing to take the brick? Like, is that overlaid on the existing brick jambs on the far sides of the existing window? Or
I think we have to
something
remove
that
a few of the bricks, because I think we essentially want the face for the brownstone or cast stone pilasters to not be more than an inch or so proud of the face of the existing masonry.
Right.
So you essentially have to over excavate the brick, right? To the left and right?
Yes.
Okay, Tom, I agree with you too. It just seems, I know it's a pretty simple back facade, and the copper just seems to be a little bit too much for it, too ornate. Do we have anyone else who wants to comment? If not, should we go to public comment then? Okay, members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your comments to staff via email at backbayac@boston.gov. Public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per person and should be focused on a project's exterior architectural features, which include landscaping. Issues related to use, street traffic, and noise are outside the commission's purview. And I believe Sir Savard had his hand raised. Would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, commissioners. Good evening, Serge Savard, co-chair of the Architecture Committee for the Neighborhood Association of the Back Bay and chairman of the NAB. We did review this project with the applicant during our meeting last week. We came to the same conclusion that we seem to hear right now from the commission. We also felt that the second one was a very nice option that was fitting very, very well with the building. The cast stone pilaster would fit very well the simplicity of the back, but also, as Mr. William Young mentioned, there is also the issue that eventually, as a potential model for the next door neighbor, it's probably going to be also easier in the future to have this same design replicated to actually reconnect these two buildings, 228 and 226 in the future. So we believe that this is a very nice option to meet the need of the resident that is asking for this here. Given all the energy that she's making to renovate this building, we really welcome all the effort that is done here, and we think it could be very beneficial for this section of Back Street. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Serge. I'm not seeing any other hands raised.
No, me either.
Okay, so we can move back to Tom for the motion.
Move approval with the provisos that the design of the window will be the brownstone bay window as presented at this hearing, and that the alteration to the original rear facade design and masonry is allowed in this case in view of and contingent upon the extensive improvements to be made to the front facade approved by the commission in June of 2026 and is not a precedent for other projects in the district.
Second.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ginger Dimitriadis,
Yes.
Susanna Gaspar,
Yes.
Tom High,
Yes.
Tom B. Nair,
Yes.
David Sampson, David.
Yes.
Yes, okay. And Rob Weintraub. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Right, moving to our next project 2, application 26.1149, 348 Marble Street at rear patio, install an air conditioning condenser. Do we have someone here tonight from 348 Marble Street?
Yep, Joe Pasquale, I made you a co-host, so you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, thank you, Joe.
I believe I
Let's
have
move.
Randy and Mike as well.
Okay, great.
Okay. I'll just read my staff comment. Staff notes that 348 Marlborough Street is built as a 3-story brick row house with a partial 4th story in 1878 to 1879. The 4th story was extended into a full 4th story in the 1920s. Staff recommends denial without prejudice, finding that the applicant must explore all options to locate the equipment to the uppermost roof where it will not be visible from the ground. Okay.
Great.
So Joe, I have your presentation and I can move forward. Just let me know when to move forward.
Sure, yeah, you could continue. Perhaps you can maybe go to the next slide and then I can explain what we're trying to do here. So looking to install one, condensing unit within a private fenced rear courtyard. this courtyard's owned exclusively by the first floor unit owner, which is myself. And it is completely enclosed by the surrounding fence. So there's no visibility from the alleyway. And what we're looking to do here is, just tie into an existing line that has already been there, which is the reasoning for placing the condensing unit there. I should say that they attempted in the past to have this condenser unit inside, or different system inside the unit, and it just wasn't adequate. During the heat that we've had, the apartment was 85 degrees and not getting any cooler. So this is kind of the only option here for adding in a condenser unit. And I know Randy and Mike who can speak to why this is the most feasible option for the placement of it rather than, the roof.
Okay, if they could raise their hands, I don't see them.
Can this condenser be seen anywhere outside of the fence?
No, it cannot.
However, we have in the past denied condensers in similar locations when they could be put on the roof. So I think Joe's recommendation makes sense here. Or unless there's been a thorough examination with the other tenants or other condo owners to see if there isn't some way to do it on the roof, either through a flue or in the past, we've used exterior gutters that will hide the lines. It is our standard process not to allow them on the ground level.
And what is the reasoning for that? If this is a privately owned courtyard that's not visible to any public, alleyways or anything?
Well, how many units are in the building?
4 units, which I own 2 of the 4.
And the top floor unit is the roof common, or is the top floor unit on the roof?
The top floor unit is on the roof. Yeah, they have roof access, I believe.
Now, according to the condo docs, there is a portion of it which is for the unit on the roof or the top floor roof, and it appears that the rest of the roof is common area and can be used for a HVAC.
Joe, is that your understanding?
To be honest, I'm here on being representative on my father, who's the owner. So I don't, I don't actually know the technicalities of the condo docs here.
Yeah, well, if Tom is correct, then the suggestion to have the condenser on the roof and then run a copper downspout to conceal the refrigerant line would be the appropriate way to go. So it sounds like a motion will be made similar to that, and you'll have to come back with a revised plan to relocate the condenser on the roof out of sight from any public way, and to conceal the refrigerant line in some way so that it looks like it was part of the original historic building.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that Randy and Mike are not here right now because they would explain to you why it's not feasible to do that. I just don't have the knowledge of why that cannot be accomplished right now. So,
all right. So I'm ready to make a motion, and Joe will give you the opportunity to come back next month with an alternative solution.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Members of
Thanks,
the public
guys.
will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at backbayac@boston.gov. Public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per person and should be focused on a project's exterior architectural features, which include landscaping. Issues related to use, street traffic, and noise are outside of the commission's purview. And sirs, you have your hand raised, and I believe you're unmuted.
Yes, thank you, commissioners, to give me some time. We do also have reviewed this application. We think that we don't have enough information to say that there is no possibilities to put this on the roof. We do think that the option that Commissioner High mentioned about using a copper downspout to pass the line and maybe reconnect to the connections that are already coming outside the building could make the work more easy for the applicant. Obviously, the best option is if they can use an unused flue, it's even better. But if it's not possible, but I think in this case, if we can relocate it in the roof, that's the preferred choice as all the application that the commission reviews. Thank you.
Okay. And Matthew has his hand raised.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I lost my notes here. Just 1 second. I wanted to, well, first of all, emphasizing it doesn't have to be in a faux downspout. It can go in an unused chimney flue or something like that. I do want to point out that this application really underscores the importance of enforcing the requirement that the condo chairman of the trustees sign applications, because the application should be countersigned not just by the applying unit owner, but the building as a whole, as I say, the chairman of the trustees, because otherwise the commission is put in the inappropriate position of being asked to put its imprimatur on a scheme which may not be in the best interest of the building as a whole, as determined by the building's internal processes. In the present case, it turns out that the applicant was prompted to put this equipment where it is because they discovered evidence that some decades ago there had been a similar unit there some decades ago. However, what we discovered in discussing this was that the prior unit had been installed by a single unit owner acting alone without consulting the rest of the building, and then it was removed because the other building owners objected. So this is an excellent example of why the counter signature is needed to prevent that sort of thing from happening. I also need to point out that the statement that keeps getting made that this rear garden is the property of the unit or the unit owner is incorrect. The rear garden is common property, like it is in all condominiums in Massachusetts. These external features, balconies, garden areas that are assigned for exclusive use are actually building property over which the unit owner has an easement for its use for some purpose. So even putting it here in the back garden would require the building as a whole's permission. It can't be done by one unit owner on his own volition. So again, the requirement to have that the commission should enforce strictly to have the building trustee chairman sign the application so we know these kinds of things aren't happening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any other raised hands. So do you want to move back to, was it Robert who was going to make the motion or Tom?
Motion is consistent with Joe's recommendation to deny without prejudice, give the applicant a chance to come back next month with an alternative solution.
Second.
Okay.
So Genia Dimitriadis,
Yes.
Susanna Gaspar,
Yes.
Tom High,
Yes.
Tom B. Nair,
Yes.
David Sampson,
Yes.
and Rob Weintraub.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Joe.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and then project 3 is application 27.0060, 299 Beacon Street to replace existing windows. I'm not going to read the whole thing. You want me to read the whole thing? Okay. Do you have anyone here from 299 Beacon Street?
I'm here to
Thank you,
present.
Cindy.
Yes. I have a, would you like me to share my screen, Joe?
That'll be fine, since I know there's quite a bit of work, so you may need to go back and forth. So you should be able to go ahead and share.
Okay, and then Joe, do you want to make your comments?
Yes. Staff notes that 299 Beacon Street is a 4-story brick row house built in 1870 and 1984. A 4-story addition was built in the open space west of the building. Following its meeting with NABB, the Neighborhood Association in the Back Bay, the applicant has made the following changes based on NAB's recommendations: demolition of the elevator head house and moving the front guardrail back from the edge of the low roof, installation of a roof hatch providing access to the main roof, and upgrading the door to its basement utility mechanical room so that it more closely resembles the adjacent exterior door. Staff recommends approval, finding that the proposed work is consistent with the Commission's design guidelines for the residential area of the district, with the exception of the proposed lower level egress windows. Because these are required for egress and minimally visible, these egress windows should be approved, provided that this approval does not create a precedent for other projects in the district.
Good evening, Commissioner. My name is Cindy Lee. I am with Embark. And the team is HM Property, who is the owner. And we have Hollins and Son as the contractor on this project. And the scope of the work is to renovate 6 existing apartments into 6 renovated apartments. And the exterior scope include replacement of all the windows, minor work and then around the entry. And most of the work will be on the 4th floor where the mansard is and at the roof level. So to orientate everyone quickly, this is a corner lot on the corner of Beacon and Exeter. It is visible from the rear alley 417, but it does not have any access to it. The building was originally built in 1870, and it is a home that has 2 semicircular bays. In and around 1984, they infill what used to be a driveway with an addition that also has a semicircular bay. Some photos on photo number 5 here shows the rear elevation of the addition visible from the alley, and then corner views up and down the street on Exeter and Beacon. The existing conditions on the ground is a setback with landscaping in the front, existing metal rails that will stay, and then we will be refurbishing the windows and lowering them for egress, and I'll show you that shortly. There is existing 2 residential entrances and a 3rd entrance that only goes to the mechanical room in the middle here. In terms of landscaping, we're proposing 2 decorative ornamental dogwoods. They're in each side of the main entrance, and then simply providing a new hedge along the fence.
May I, excuse me, do you want to take questions as we move along, or would you rather go through your presentation first?
I can do both.
Okay, let me ask you on the landscaping plan. Have you involved the Garden Club of the Back Bay at all in that design of that plan and the selection of the trees?
I have not, but I will reach out based on some experience with other projects we've done in the Back Bay. We know that the species is within their collection of acceptable plantings, but we are open to their working through the design with them.
And the entryway, on the plans, it's labeled brick pavers, and I assume you're replacing what's there. Will it be the same running bond pattern that's there now?
Yes, we're we will replace if needed any.
Okay.
Otherwise, you know, it will be existing to remain.
But the plan, but the design of the bricks will be what's there now.
Yes, to match.
Fine. Thank you.
No change. So existing elevation, the original building with the two bays is on the right, and then the small 1984 infill on the right. So the original's on the left, sorry. And they do have different floor levels on the inside. They don't connect very well. So the proposed Beacon Street elevation consists of refurbishing the main entrance, cutting down 4 basement windows to provide secondary egress, cutting open, raising the door head of the mechanical room door and providing a new door to match the adjacent door. This was a comment we received from the neighborhood association. And then replacing both the original window and the 1980s aluminum windows with historic double hung windows from Marvin. And then I'll talk about the roof in a bit. The main entrance is actually in great shape. So all we're proposing is refurbishing the existing door, painting it, and the ironwork, adding a downlight that's tucked in the soffit over the door, and then door intercoms as well as new brass hardware. We are going to have to repair this first riser in the stoop. You can see it's not in great shape and it's collecting water and ice, and it would be a hazard in the winter. And so the door that goes into the mechanical space, as you can see here, is sort of like it's not in alignment with anything. It's part of the 1984 addition. So we're raising the door head so that it matched consistently with the door and the windows that are right adjacent to it, and replacing it with the wood door. As far as the garden units, these are the photos of the existing conditions. They're pretty, they're not very tall, but they have these tiny little area wells. And what we need to do is, based on the existing lower level floor height, we have to cut these down in order to meet the egress requirement, including an egress well so that someone could get out in an emergency. They're currently 2/2, so we're proposing bringing the new window in the configuration of 2/2.
In your drawings and presentation, you refer to enlarging them. Are you widening them, or are you simply lowering the?
We're simply lowering the sill.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
In the addition, there's this one door on the 4th floor. We're going to replace that with a wood door with glass. Firstly, and then secondly, we're needing to replace this picket rail to a 42-inch tall guardrail height rail, but it will be identical to the way that it is configured.
When you're replacing the door, I noticed in looking at the building and also in current photographs, it doesn't seem, I'm not quite sure what it is, but it looks like it's either further forward than the windows, or it doesn't match the windows.
Yeah, so I think there's a storm door on the outside.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
Yeah, because you should try to make it match if you can.
Right, so when we put the door in, it would be, I think, it would be set back and more in plane with the windows.
Good, good.
Yeah. On the Exeter Street side, we are replacing the windows. There is one window at the garden level on this face that is currently an empty hole with the plywood. So we're proposing putting in a window, and in the abutters basement windows, their configuration is 3/3, so that's what we're proposing. We're also gonna just refurbish this metal work. Looking at the rear of the 1984 addition, not really clear how this window comes to be. They're like all different sizes and heights. And here's the existing elevation. What we're proposing, because we're reframing the floors, because some of the existing floors are not quite co-compliant, they're too low. We're proposing raising the sill of these windows and toothing in some matching bricks to make the sizes more consistent and more uniform with historic double hung wood windows.
If you go back one side, what was the reason for that one window being set back at the top left?
Oh, yes. So there is there's an existing, oh yes, let me show you. The corner camps back. I don't know why they did that. Oh, I think that there's a window here. The perpendicular butter has a window here. So they camped it back.
Yeah.
It's a little cookie, but
okay.
Interesting.
And then all of the vents that are here on this face obviously will be welded to the roof so that those will be repaired and restored to brick, infill with brick. The roof, as I said, it has the majority of the work. Currently, there is original skylight over the original stair. There's a couple of other like modern skylights, a roof hatch, and then there is this little bump here, which is a head house for a residential elevator through the addition. We don't have the elevator in the renovation, so you'll see that we're picking up the neighborhood association's suggestion to remove that. Additionally, we're going to refurbish this roof deck. So in the proposal, we're replacing the existing skylight, ornamental skylight in kind, in the same configuration. We're redoing a new roofing overall. We're repairing and providing chimney caps, cast stone. We're providing a roof hatch from the 4th floor to have access to the top roof here. And then we're able to get the mechanical condensers sort of as far back from the 2 street as possible. And then we are in removing the elevator head house. We're proposing taking the rail that's currently along the front edge of the addition and pushing it back because we do have to raise that to a guardrail height. In the rear, in the same place where the existing rail is, we're replacing it with a 42-inch metal one. And then we have a hatch in the back for access to this roof deck.
Since you've removed the bulkhead and you're moving the railing back, you're gaining a lot of deck space there, and I'm glad you're moving the fence back to a certain extent, but it's still, when you get to your sight lines, it's still very visible from the front. And if you were to move it back just a little bit further to the front face of the chimney, which is also the front face of where the bulkhead used to be, at least based upon your drawings, it would minimize the visibility a great deal more. See, it's right now it's cutting right through almost the middle of your fence line. But if you move it back just to where that inner line, no, next one jog over there, right back to there, which is, I believe, where the front of the bulkhead was.
That's right. This is sort of, yeah, where, so I think if we can align with this edge of where the chimney is, that would be, you know, I think that's a more of a accurate alignment. Whereas this is an art, like the elevator head house was an artifact of a later addition.
I understand. No, I'm simply trying to reduce the visibility of the railing a good deal more, because right now it's quite visible. I mean, we could simply say it's got to move back as far as so that it's not visible at all, but that would put you even further.
That would put
Yeah.
me like back here,
Yeah,
and
yeah, which is,
not usable.
yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. So you do see this line here, but I think this is also an artifact of
Right.
drawing. So you would not, when we redo the roof, replace all the slate and see what, you know, trims left over and that may need to be replaced. This will be seamless going across. That's what.
What is the measurement from the front edge to the where the railing is being installed? You don't have any measurements on your drawings, so.
Yes, right now it's 3 feet.
Okay, so if we moved it back 5 feet, then you would be approximately the area that I'm talking about.
You're right. So just going over the work on the roof, we will also, the owner is also committed to replacing the slate on the mansard in the exact configuration, including the 2-color scheme. I'll show you it's existing. We did extensive drone photographs in order to document the existing conditions. We will be rebuilding the snow belt and the copper gutter in and around, and making repair to all of the pediment and trim on this level. This little square, this little window that's in the center of the original building is not original, but we're proposing refurbishing it and replacing a pediment, a flat one that we can take precedent from on this side elevation. So I think in the elevation, that's what we're showing. Here we go. So in our section study through Beacon Street and at the addition where the deck is and at Exeter, the mechanical equipment, because of the depth of the building, would most likely not be exposed to view. So that concludes my presentation.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, thank you. You want to move to public comment? Does anyone else have any questions before we move to public comment? Okay.
I'll just bring up the script.
I just have sorry, I missed your note whether you're rebuilding the color strip in the slate siding or not. You are? Yes?
Yes, we'll be matching the distinctive strip.
Absolutely.
Okay, no, I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand the sentence, but I'm relieved. Yes, thank you.
Okay, members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at backbayac@boston.gov. Public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per person and should be focused on a project's exterior architectural features, which include landscaping. Issues related to use, street traffic, and noise are outside of the Commission's purview. And Serge, I see you have your hand raised. Would you like to speak?
Again, thank you for taking my questions. We did review this project at the Neighborhood Association at the Architecture Committee last time. We're very pleased with all the amendments and modifications that were done. We think this is a great improvement to the building. There is only one little aspect that I would be curious that we didn't have a chance to touch on when we met the architect the first time is given the reconfiguration now of the small lower level roof deck and the fact that the elevator override is now gone. I'm curious about the positioning of the hatch, and it's something the architect has looked at because right now the way the hatch is located, it's facing completely the back railing. If it would be turned 90 degrees, it would be probably invisible both from the back and from the front of the building. So I'm just curious, is this something that the architect has considered? Thank you.
Okay. And then I believe Sue Pringle has her hand raised.
Yes, thanks. Just a couple of things that didn't occur to me before, and I would like to bring them up. Relating to the front of the new building. It looked to me like the walkway that comes to the front door didn't go all the way to the sidewalk, and I wondered what the reasoning was there. And whether the bricks could be continued down to the sidewalk. I appreciated the expansion of the mechanical door, but I think maybe the design should be a little quieter because I think it may confuse people who are going into the building. You might want to just have a fairly simple door at that location. And finally, I would hope that Joe would have final review on where that railing goes on the addition. Thank you.
Okay, and then Lori Thomas, I believe you have your hand raised.
Okay, Lori.
Thanks, Joe. Cindy, I'm co-chair of the tree committee for the garden club, and if the BBAC would like us to review your plan, we'd be happy to do that. Looking over it, I can see that it's a very appropriate, simple design. So what we would be talking with you about is the caliper size for the trees and how to protect them from rabbits, and that sort of thing. So we'd be happy to work with you, and Joe can put you in touch with us. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Lori.
Okay, and then Cindy, did you have any other comments you wanted to make? Or you're set?
I'm set.
Okay, all right, so moving back to Tom for the motion.
Move approval with the provisos that the lowering of the basement windows on the front of the main building is approved because they are required for egress and are minimally visible and is not a precedent for other applications. That the deck and front railing on the annex building are to be recessed no less than 5 feet from the inner front edge of the parapet to reduce visibility from Beacon Street. That the landscaping plan is to be approved by staff in consultation with the Garden Club of the Back Bay, and that the design and materials of the roof slate, skylight, and all fences and railings are to be approved by staff.
Second.
Okay, great.
Hey, Gina Dimitriadis,
Yes?
Susanna Gaspar,
Yes.
Tom High,
Yes.
Tom B. Nair,
Yes.
David Sampson,
Yes.
and Rob Weintraub.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Cindy and team.
Thank you very much.
And I believe that brings us to administrative review.
Yeah, and I'll say application for 31 Mass Ave has been withdrawn from the admin.
Okay. So, Joe, I just had one question about the administrative review. I noticed, what was it, 125 Commonwealth, I think? We were extending the approval we gave last year, kind of around the same time, for another year. They just haven't been able to get it off the ground yet.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Any other questions and comments, or do we want to make a motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Great.
Gina Dimitriadis,
Yes.
Susanna Gaspar,
Yes.
Tom High,
Yes.
Tom B. Nair,
Yes.
David Sampson,
Yes.
and Rob Weintraub.
Yes.
Okay. So I think, is that staff updates now?
Yeah, I don't have any. I think summer's almost over, and hopefully we'll have a busy busy autumn with design review projects.
Okay. And then you mentioned in another conversation, you think the November meeting the date's gonna get changed. Do you know when yet?
Let me double check that. It falls.
It's scheduled for the 11th, which is Veterans Day.
Yeah, let me just look quickly. I think we moved it to that Thursday, but
To the 12th?
let me just confirm that. Yep, Thursday the 12th. November 12th will be our November hearing.
Okay. So put that in.
Okay.
All right.
It's a Thursday, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Wow. No Wednesday. What am I gonna
I
do?
know. What do we do?
Yeah,
Holiday.
the only
All right.
holiday that's not celebrated on a Monday.
Yeah, I know, really.
All right.
Okay, well, I guess that's it. Hope everybody else enjoys the rest of the summer.
Likewise.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
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 All right. Thanks, everybody.
Right, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
See you in September. Bye.